Hello, and welcome to the East Africa Business Podcast. I'm Sam Floy, and I'm now based from Kenya, having explored the business environment across the region at the end of 2016, primarily through the use of this podcast, and deciding, for me at least, that it was the best one to live and work from. This episode, and the others in the archive, are all about showcasing startups and organisations who are playing their part in helping East Africa develop and grow. And by following along, you too can hear their stories. For now though, let's enjoy the rest of this funky intro music, and then get started with the episode. The demography in East Africa dictates that tens of millions of people will be entering the job market in the coming years. There is not only a challenge of creating jobs, but also guiding individuals on a path of where they want to go. People typically lack the career counselling framework from, say, their families, especially for roles such as digital marketing manager. Jussi is building Fuzu, a platform to guide people through their careers. We discuss growing a company with a base in both Finland and Kenya, how Fuzu categorises their type of job seeker, and the challenges of bringing a disruptive business model to a traditional market. Jussi also has probably the best rationale I've heard around the role of for-profit and not-for-profit organisations in solving large-scale social problems in developing markets, something I've always struggled to grapple with myself. It comes in at around 12 minutes. For now though, I hope you enjoy this episode with Jussi. With Jussi.
Cool. So I'm here today with Jussi from Fuzu. Jussi, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Cool. So just to get us started, could you tell us a bit about you and a bit about Fuzu?
Yeah, so my name is Jussi Hinkkanen. I'm originally Finnish. I've been working the past 13 years now in the African and, let's say, Middle East and emerging market context. We started working with the concept of Fuzu around 2013. At the time, I was still working with Nokia. And we had realized at the time that youth unemployment and unemployment in general is a massive challenge across emerging markets, particularly in Africa, where we have millions and millions of people pouring into the job market. And we realized that the old tools don't work. We need to come up with something more exciting and more engaging, something that guides people forward. And that was the birthplace of Fuzu.
See, so the problem you're trying to solve is there are lots of... Is it just young people, or is it just lots
No,
of...
basically the entire job market. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So basically looking to make it easier for people to enter the job market.
It's about entering the job market. It's about finding your way. It's about... let's say, figuring out what's the next step in your career. It's about finding something that actually meets your passion and so forth. It's really about trying to understand where you're heading and how it will help you out. But in a context where people haven't really had any type of career counseling or who lack role models in their families and so forth, who don't really know. Let's imagine that you go to the countryside and talk to someone and say that, okay, would you like to be a marketing manager? And there's just then a blank stare at you. What is a marketing manager? So I think it's really about trying to help people to figure out what kind of modern careers people have and how could you have one.
See, okay. And in terms of sort of how it feels as the user, do I call you up and you give me some advice? Like how does that sort of happen?
Yeah, so Fuzu is a fully online experience. So we have some services that are also let's say face-to-face or over the phone, but the actual experience is over online. So basically it's a mobile-first platform that then basically has three main elements in it. It's a platform for dreaming, which basically means you can do career tests, play with different career options, figure out what is actually the right path for you. Secondly, it's a platform for growth, meaning that you can learn new skills and validate the learning results. So basically then to fill those gaps that you have in your soft or hard skills. And then thirdly, then it's a platform what we call to be found. Which means that we match you with job opportunities out there that match with your particular profile, with your interests and the direction you want to take with your career.
I see. Okay. And so when you meet someone and how do you sort of persuade them to download the app? How do you sort of say it in a sentence? If you know what I mean?
That's a tough one. So you should always have the elevator pitch ready. But basically, what we say is that Fuzu is a career development platform for emerging markets. So basically, it's a career development employability platform, which takes you from A to B, from where you are today to reaching your dream. So that's essentially what Fuzu is about. It's that entire journey. It's that pathway to different options in your life, and fully online, fully built around the concept of how do we guide you, how do we push you to the right direction, how do we motivate you, How do we encourage you to go over the mountain that you feared and so forth? So that's really what it's about now.
Got it. Okay.
But not a one sentence, I have to say.
And just in terms of sort of rough scale of things, so how many people are using Fuzu?
At the moment, we have about 115,000 individual monthly users. The total community is about 230,000. And if I look at just from January to now April, we've doubled our monthly user base. Currently, we're growing at about 10% per week. So it's a pretty aggressive growth at the moment. We are fully focused on Kenya at the moment, but we will start the expansion to neighboring markets quite soon, which then, of course, means that we will start registering many more people over the coming months.
I see. And do you have a typical, how many sort of types of users do you have? Is it that you go for university graduates, or what's
that's a very good question. So basically, we are pretty agnostic. So that's one of the sort of tricks of Fuzu. So Fuzu tries to understand who you are and what you're after. So if you are a manager, the experience is quite different from if you are an entry-level, let's say, worker, or if you are a recent graduate. So we use machine learning-based mechanisms to understand, let's say, first to segment user base, but then at the same time then to talk to the user in a language that then actually is relevant for that particular user group. So we have currently about 7 user groups. So those are the kind of big categories.
And that's roughly, so you would say.
What you mean? What type of user?
Yeah, is it like person A is a manager?
Exactly. So person A might be manager. Person B might be a young professional who has let's say 2-3 years of experience. Third one might be sort of recent graduate. Fourth one might be what we call a hustler, someone who is doing sort of short stints of work left and right. Next one might be then an expert, which is someone who has been working more than 5 years or more and is specialized in something. And then the last group is then the blue collar workforce, basically people with a vocational education background who have a particular skill that they leverage in blue collar type of positions.
Okay, good. So then you've identified people into it, and then they each have a different experience. They each will have a different experience with or different.
Yeah, currently what we do is the principal difference currently is that because of the algorithm, the way that it works there in the back end, we are able to customize the jobs, we're able to customize the courses, we're able to customize the news that you see. And as we go now forward, then we will be able to be much more granular with that experience. So the system understands that where you are in life, what's the motivation behind your actions, where does it come from, so that we can then also then recognize that, hey, maybe Sam, you've now applied for 10 positions already, maybe it's time to chat to a professional career coach, maybe you need to recalibrate a bit what you're doing. So it's really about continuously analyzing where you're going, where you're heading, and how we would optimally help you.
I see, and I'm guessing the vision around it is that because all of this is happening through the app or through the service, it's a machine that's doing this rather than a career counsellor.
Exactly. So basically, it's a fully automated experience, and which then, of course, when you think about what happens here now, is that first of all, we of course will be able to support millions and millions of people having challenges in either finding their way in life, or even people who are migrating from rural areas to the very urban areas to understand what kind of jobs are out there. But at the same time, of course, all this data that we collect and the learning that people do and the tenacity that people show, that of course then acts on the other side. It's also data that we can use then for employers to find the needle in the haystack. So basically finding the best matching candidate or professional for their open positions.
Got it. Okay. With the just quickly on this bit on the content side of things. So let's say as a new manager signs up and you're like, okay, brilliant, we've got a new manager. These are the courses that we're going to offer to them.
Yeah.
Roughly, I mean, like how many courses are there that you can choose from?
Currently, the course offering is not stunning, I have to be honest with that. So we have about 130 courses at the moment.
Is that divided by the 7? For each?
So basically that's the whole bunch. So basically, and most of these are for entry level. So basically, they are more kind of career guiding type of courses, which give you an idea of what would it be like to work as, let's say again, as marketing manager, or it could be about entrepreneurship. It could be about how to prepare for an interview. It could be about how to write a perfect CV, that sort of thing. So we are just about now to launch hundreds of new courses on the platform. So we are currently building that and moving more to, let's say, more mature professionals as well. So that you have kind of a clear way forward, starting from entry-level courses and then move forward.
I understand. Just out of interest, it sounds like that's, if you sort of have these 7 different segments and you're having to produce content for all of them, that sounds like quite a lot of work. Was there a reason to not just pick one and say we're going to nail the managers bit and then we're going to think about the others?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and you might be right. But basically, the approach what I've chosen is that none of the segments in a market like Kenya are large enough. Even if you look at the managerial sector, the sector is just not large enough to justify the investment that we have made. Secondly, then, if you think about the way that the market operates, they all have a lot of similarities. And my purpose has never been to create content, but to be basically a channel for distribution of content. So for us actually to build a content pool that is then able to cater for different types of groups of users is actually not that massive work, because we're not building the courses from scratch. We are piggybacking on existing ones, or we are partnering with external players who have thousands or tens of thousands of courses that we can then also on our side match with people's specific requirements, but also then can also then monetize.
I see. Let's talk about the monetization side of it. So I take Fuzu as a profit-making, or a hoping to be profit-making company.
Yeah. So Fuzu is a for-profit company, and the reason for that, we could have set up this, of course, as a non-profit as well. The past experience to show that if we want to tackle a significant social challenge like we are, the best way to do it is actually as a business. If you think about now and I'll come back to you in a second why, but the typical challenge with let's say non-profit type of approaches for this sort of challenge is that you build a project, you build a platform, and it kind of works, but it never really works properly because you don't have that fundamental innovation feedback loop that actually just churns out feedback, which then pushes you to improve the platform, and because that sort of natural loop is missing, you will just have a very mediocre platform. So we decided that because of the years we've been working in this context and having launched a lot of different type of products and services, it was natural that it has to be for profit. That's the only way to actually solve a challenge of this kind. We could have gotten millions and millions and millions and millions of funding if we had done this as a non-profit, which of course is a bit of a funny fact, but yeah, that's fine.
I see. Okay, and so I'm just interested on this. So you're saying that for this specific type of let's put it, problem to solve, it makes sense for it to be a for-profit. Are there instances of problems to solve where you think it's actually better that it is a non-profit organisation that's looking to solve it?
Yeah, but I myself I've worked with the United Nations. I worked with the World Bank. I've worked with the Mozambican government. Inside the government, I worked with multinationals in the emerging markets context, and so I've basically seen it all. Typically, I'd say that the way I see the world is going now is there needs to be much tighter collaboration between the different stakeholders and to everyone accept where they are at their best. And I think that's sort of combining those strengths. That's the key thing now. The NGOs typically have very, very deep networks and deep understanding of the challenges on the ground, and they have, let's say, the ready-made platform for distributing and building awareness, and that is massively important, especially when you're solving deep social challenges. But I think that now what we're seeing more and more is that then NGOs and startups and even multinationals are working together, each leveraging their sort of natural assets. So I'd say that's more the way forward. The reason why I'm saying why in this case, for example, I believe that it's private sector has a better edge on it is that let's say when we have sort of systemic failure of this scale, as we have with our youth unemployment or unemployment in general. Let's give you a few figures. So between 2010 and 2020, there's more than 120 million people entering the job market in Africa alone. Between 2010 and 2035, there will be 740 million. which makes Africa the largest global workforce, larger than China or larger than India. And just the scale of this challenge is so massive that governments or NGOs are actually not capable of building something that scales fast enough, is agile enough. So we kind of need to bring the world-class innovation to this space as well, and of course to work openly with a number of partners. We're partnering with a number of NGOs as well. So like we've been working with Rockefeller Foundation, we've been working with Equity Foundation here in Kenya, and many others.
Mm-hmm. What have you been doing with them, Shazam?
I think it kind of goes back to each of us having our natural assets. So basically us helping them out with our platform. For example, to give you an example, we work with McKinsey's Generation Kenya initiative, where we've been supporting McKinsey in using Fuzu in finding people, thousands of people in the past year for their training and internship programs. Building a platform like Fuzu for any NGO or for any government would have cost, maybe my guess is 3 to 5 times more than what it has cost actually to us, because we've used this sort of private sector proven approach here.
Okay. How does Fuzu make money?
So Fuzu has a two-sided business model. And what that means is that we leverage both job seekers as well as then employers. When I say that we leverage job seekers, I don't mean that Fuzu is a paid-for service. Fuzu is a freemium service where basically the dreaming and going and being found, all of that is free of charge. So you can take career tests, you can even take all of those 130 courses I mentioned, you can take them free, and you can apply for jobs for free. But then along the journey of using Fuzu, we have then landed different type of service that we call Fuzu Extras, and those services then enhance their experience. For example, you have a premium CV, or you have you can book a session with a career coach via the platform, or where you get a detailed analysis of how you compare to all the other candidates that we're applying for the same position, in terms of skills, in terms of personality, in terms of work experience, in terms of education, and you even get to see the top 10 candidate CVs, which we automatically anonymize and remove the company names and so on. So the power of the platform is really in the depth of data, how we can actually leverage that in developing premium services. And then on the employer side, it's fully paid for. So basically, you launch a campaign where we automatically analyze all the CVs, or where we integrate psychometric testing, talent profiling, and so forth. Those are then paid for services.
Okay. And from the employer perspective, are they sort of in their head? Are they comparing you to other recruiters or other jobs? Is that how they view Fuzu?
Yeah, I think that when you come to, let's say, disrupt the market that is already there, you are always, of course, fighting with the conventions that people have. In this space, there's two conventions. There's the typical classifieds model, and then you have the typical recruiter model. And those are what people are used to. So basically what we are doing what both of these are doing now, because we're basically integrating, embedding intelligence in the platform, which is something that typically the recruiters were doing, because they were doing kind of human-based analysis and vetting of the candidates, but that's what we are now automating. So it is that's been one of the challenges with us, is that it takes a bit of time for also our clients to understand how do we differentiate from a traditional recruiter company, as well as how do we differentiate from a traditional, let's say, dumb classifieds platform, which is basically just an advertising engine.
I see. And what's your pitch?
We can find you the needle in the haystack much faster and much lower cost. So just give you an example. So we can save up to 70, 75, 80% of the screening time. So because basically when you come to Fuzu, you launch your campaign. We start matching it with the best talent out there, because we know which people should be the ones who apply for this position. They apply. And then basically we rank all those candidates automatically. So out of those 500 people, we show that these are the top 15, top 20 that you should focus your energy at. At the same time, what we also do is we do even automatic headhunting, which means that when you launch your campaign, we already go to our talent pool and we find you that actually, would you like to, Sam, actually talk to these people right away? So something that is unfathomable with any traditional classifieds platform, where the client publishes a position, to a very generic crowd of people who then start sending in applications in different formats, PDFs, letters, whatever that they are, and then your HR team is flooded with hundreds of thousands of applications, most of them completely irrelevant to what you're doing. So it's a massive change to that.
I see. And is it that it's quite quick to fill a job, or do you kind of still think that it's just that we'll spend the same time, but you'll kind of go deeper into each of these candidates to kind of assess whether they're actually going to be a fit rather than...
Yeah, I think it's both quicker. At the same time, it's much less, let's say, human resource intense, which means that the same team can handle much higher volume of campaigns or, let's say, recruitment processes at the same time. It just makes the HR teams work much easier. It also makes the hiring managers work much easier. So it's basically it's about time and it's about money as well. And you need less in all honesty, you need less headhunting as well, because you don't. We do that automatically.
Do you have like a little ding in the office when you get like a superstar person sign up?
Actually, we don't, but that's a good idea. So we should do that, definitely.
Very good. The technology behind it sounds quite sort of quite involved. Is this something which is done here in Kenya, done in Finland? How's that sort of?
Yeah, so what we're doing, we're basically combining the strengths of Kenya and Finland. So much of the R&D team, actually most of the R&D sits in Finland, are very experienced both back-end and front-end developers, whereas then our customer service and digital marketing and marketing more broadly, communications and content side, that sits here in Kenya. If you look at then the platform itself, so that has been developed by a team that is very experienced in building sort of large scale systems. My own background is also in building complex architectures, and one of the kind of driving forces behind Fuzu has been since the beginning to come up with a data architecture that actually allows us to be building a model that let's say somehow joins all these elements of learning, let's say job search, career development, all of that together, and that's been one of the key assets what we have in the system. Initially, we were using, let's say, calculation-based algorithms for doing the matching and analyzing the candidates, and that has proven to be very highly efficient. Now, over the past few months, we've actually now started moving them to machine learning-based algorithms, which then leverage, of course, completely different type of technology, but it's still very much sort of let's say it leverages the work that we've been doing over the past 2 years now. So in that sense, it's quite exciting. We're building our technology stack is based on Ruby on Rails. So also something that is not that well known here in Kenya. There are now maybe 10, 15, 20 Ruby developers here in Nairobi. The numbers are growing, so gradually then I would like to also then move part of my R&D team here, because there's really brilliant people here on the ground.
Okay. And so the guys that are in Kenya, you say that a lot of sort of marketing and things, it seems that there's quite a lot of people who this could be applicable to. How do you sort of A, decide who we're going to go after, and B, sort of get them to actually sign up? Is it
You mean in terms of team members, or?
Yeah, what I'm trying to get, is it the sort of thing where you can just go and start leafleting and people will just get it and they'll start downloading the app, or is it something we need to be a bit more involved and you need to kind of explain what it is? And
we do the marketing piece. Okay, so I think that on the job seeker side, it's been pretty easy. Of course, there again, the convention that the users are used to is that they are using these different types of job platforms. In Fuzu's case, the challenge of that experience is that even though let's say the platform is more usable, and I'm not bragging here, but the user experience is much better than on the competing platforms. The only trick, or let's say barrier for sort of really widespread growth is that it takes a bit of time for you to build your profile. It's a bit like building your profile on LinkedIn. You have to invest some time in writing your story, who you are, what do you know, what you've done in the past, and so forth. So the profile is pretty similar. One thing what we are currently working on, over the next month, we will be releasing a feature that we can actually start doing that automatically. So it's going to lower the barrier of entry. But in all honesty, we could be growing even faster, or be much faster, but it hasn't really been a massive challenge if the guys on board.
Okay. And that's an interesting point, actually. I mean, are you a replacement to LinkedIn? Are you complementary? How does that? And also, is LinkedIn a big thing here?
LinkedIn is, of course, is pretty big. So LinkedIn is pretty big. It's mostly used by the white collar workforce, as it is all around the world. So LinkedIn hasn't really been able to penetrate the blue collar workforce. So that's one thing. I think that the key differentiator is what we have is really that the experience itself, as said, is customized as per who you are. What's your level of education? What's your level of experience? So that it's basically it's a good fit for you. Secondly, it's a mobile first platform, which means that you can use it with your low end headset and so forth. Thirdly, then the way that we are, we build the testing engines and the psychometric profiling and all that. Those are really critical ones for the lot of employers, and none of that LinkedIn currently possesses. And also then, in all honesty, LinkedIn hasn't been actually that strong when it comes to anything else but professional networking. They are, of course, now coming pretty strongly with the Linda proposition and so forth. But I still see that there is space in this market for a fast-moving innovator, and that's how we see ourselves.
Thanks for that. Cool. So we'll just do a few more questions. Okay. Obviously, have there been any particular lessons that you've learned from doing Fuzu, or sort of surprises that you've found?
That's a good question. A tough one at the same time. I think that maybe one mistake there is that let's say I realize is that I think the good thing about Fuzu has been that we've been actually sitting and standing, let's say, on two continents. So there's a lot of good about that as well. But I probably should have spent sort of 50-50 of my time here in Kenya and 50% of my time in Finland, because I participate a lot in the R&D as well. So basically, I've been maybe spending about 70% of my time in Finland. And now that the product itself is where I want it to be, I'm now much more focused than Kenya. So that's one thing. So just balancing that out, leading two different teams, two different cultures is of course quite challenging. Then another one is that even though the market is definitely there and it's growing very quickly, I think that the inertia that you have typically in the B2B business is something that where you really need to innovate on how do you sell to companies, how do you simplify your message, how do you get them excited, how do you build trust? And even though having worked in this context for many years, and we did it, in my mind, in a perfect way. I'll give you an example. We won the award in 2015 for most innovative market launch in Kenya, and same year that the Ubers of the world came to this market, and we did it with a tiny marketing budget.
What did it like?
No, basically we were combining very sort of different type of tactics: street activations, mall activations, church activations, a lot of media push, TV interviews, really selling the story, what we were doing. I also had negotiated myself 16 tier 1 companies in Kenya to partner with us in the launch, which basically meant that I could ride with their brand when we went live. So we had the likes of Equity Bank and Technobrains of the world and so forth, which is very important when you build trust, when you build your brand in a market where there is not that much trust for let's say new actors. So that is a big thing. How do you plan your market entry? How do you get everyone excited, and how do you build trust? But still, I think that kind of the eventual, like the slowness of the B2B sales, I should have maybe dedicated even more energy into getting our back-end, let's say, tools for sales to a level that we can really start hitting the deals. And that's not actually now where we are, but I should have done that maybe 6-7 months earlier.
Okay. And if we were to fast forward, let's say 3 years, what does Fuzu feel like?
So if we go, let's take now maybe a target. Now we're in 2017, so let's talk 2022. I'd say that Fuzu at that point, I wouldn't be happy if we didn't have at that point 25 million annual users. If we were not active in more than 15 countries at that point. So those are just gives you a bit of an idea. A concept like Fuzu is very much it's built around scale. So if it doesn't scale, it doesn't survive. So it's a must have to basically build and scale rapidly.
Good. And people listening at home, how can they either sort of follow the story or sign up?
Yeah, you can always go to www.fuzu.com and just take a look and give us feedback. All feedback is always welcome, and ideas as well. And basically, you can follow us on our website, or you can check out our Fuzu Ltd Facebook channel, or then our Fuzu Twitter handle as well. So that's where we're publishing news and stories about where we're going.
Great stuff. I'll link to those in the show notes as well. So what does Fuzu mean?
Fuzu actually is a Swahili word which means self-made success.
Really? So there's a 4-letter word for self-made success?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of different interpretations, but that's the one that we have chosen for. So it's to succeed to get where you want to go with your life. Yeah.
That sounds very good. Cool. Well, Jussi, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Before we head, just a quick moment to say thank you for listening. You can see the show notes of this episode by heading to samfloy.com/podcast and then searching for the episode title. That's samfloy.com/podcast. Now, a few people have got in touch and have been asking about how this podcast came about. And well, it all started when I took a one-way flight to Rwanda to seek out business opportunities across the region. I'm now at the stage of formulating a bit of a plan of the business I want to go into, based on all of these podcast interviews, and we'll be keeping a record of what I get up to on my blog. And so if you're interested in being kept in the loop, you can sign up to the newsletter there. Again, it's samfloy.com. Also, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback about the podcast, or indeed anything, please feel free to email me, podcast@samfloy.com, and I'd be very happy to chat. In any case, have a great week and speak to you soon.